what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again, 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 again.
Welcome to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Quinn, coming to you as always from Studio B here at the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Thanks as always to Lumpen Radio and its fearless leader, Logan Bay, for having us on. And thanks also to Jamie Trecker and everyone else who helps here. So thanks to the whole Lumpen Radio family. I also want to thank you guys, especially those who are listening live. If you are, not especially, but just to let you know, if you are listening live, then you could hop on over to the live chat room. It's tlk.io/WLPN, and you can join in on the conversation there. The conversation is primarily poking fun at me. So just beware that's what it will be. So if you're not listening live, it means you're probably listening via podcast, and that would be iTunes or any other kind of podcasting software, stuff like that. Thanks to you as well. We always appreciate if you leave positive feedback. We've been getting some good ones lately, so I want to thank you guys for that. I think I put out a call several weeks ago for you guys to leave me I said, would it kill you to leave me a review? And I think I said something like that, and I went on and realized that people had been leaving reviews, so I apologize for that, and also at the same time, thank you. I'm pulling it up right now. Let me see if I can get some of the reviews up here. I always forget, so I might as well just do it right now. And while I'm pulling that up, I should probably mention what this show is about. The goal of the show is to open up a window into how the people making, selling, marketing, and facilitating the beer getting into your glass feel about the topics that are a part of their everyday lives. Many of my greatest beer experiences have been talking about beer while sharing beer with people whose opinions I respect and admire, and it's these experiences that I hope to capture with the Insiders Roundtable. And with that, I will get to the reviews, and then I'll get to my guests. I have to mention, though, that the opinions of my guests, we have a pretty opinionated couple of guests here. Their opinions are their own and their own only. They don't reflect necessarily Lumpen Radio's or they don't reflect Lumpen Radio's opinions or the Beer Temple's or any other entity that they may or may not be associated with professionally. It's just their own opinions. So I will. I guess I can. I'll read some reviews here before I get to my guests. My guests can wait. So it was. I guess I should probably sort it by most recent. Okay. So I wanted to thank you guys for leaving the reviews. There's been a couple lately, so I just wanted to thank you guys. Thanks to, N1138, pretty interesting name. Feel bad for that. I don't know why anyone's parents would ever name them N1138, but I might even be saying it wrong. It might be N1138. Sounds like he's a cyborg or she's a cyborg of some kind. But anyway, I can't hear what was just said. Anyway, said I listened to several beer podcasts that I enjoy, but this one is without a doubt the most informative. I always learn something while being entertained. listening to this, from beer styles to trends to issues in the industry. Thanks. See you, man. So thank you. I am not filtering these. I have not cherry-picked them. These are just the last. And that was a 5-star review. Another one said, it's okay, and then said 5-star review. Laughlin281 said, I guess I'd listen to every episode, is what he said. So thank you. And then I really wanted to get to the last two. Well, there's one in between that from Coach Betts that I'll read first. It says, excellent discussions are always worth a listen. I'm still waiting for them to address the threat of AB, InBev, and pay to play, though. A lot of inside jokes on these things. So if you guys listen, you know that we talk about it a lot, and we might be talking about it most likely more this episode. So then we have one from Lucas Christian, 3-star review. Like I said, I'm not cherry picking them. We've only had 2 3-star reviews ever, and this was one of them from Lucas. It said, stop with the stupid, quote, dust jokes. This podcast is about 75% enjoyable. The most unbearable part is the idiotic and consistently distracting jokes about zombie dust. I get it. You think that it is funny to poke at novice beer drinkers who think zombie dust is the greatest beer ever. You just distract from the excellent beer knowledge of your guests every time the pod devolves into uncreative ways to make fun of bros who, yes, are annoying. Otherwise, thanks for having on excellent local and national guests and discussing unique aspects of the beer industry. Well, thank you, Lucas. Probably still going to have some zombie dust jokes. I don't know. I think it's lovingly joke. In fact, it's not that I think. I know, because I know the Dust Brothers personally, and we do sometimes talk about zombie dust off air. All joking aside, we all really like that beer, and I think for some of them, especially sales reps, it's hard to compete with something like that people really love. So it's fun to poke fun at the the big bad Three Floyds Citra hopped beer. But yeah, I mean, I could certainly see it getting old. But then you've got literally 2 reviews later from Hey There, Muscly Arm wrote 5-star review, Zombie Dust Radio Hour. Dusty and Buster always give you the insider info on the latest dust-related news, events, and happenings. Lusty for Dusty, Dust or Bust, and Dust We Trust, ISO Dust. So, yeah, there you are. So, kind of a mixed bag there, but I wanted to thank everybody for leaving reviews. There have been more than that. Those are just the past couple that I read. But let's get into my guest. Let's get into introducing my guest. So we go in order of seniority, and we have a very senior member of the panel this week, Mr. Steve Masney. How are you?
I am well. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Steve, for listeners, you guys probably know who Steve is, but he's got several beer accomplishments. May I list some of your beer accomplishments, if you don't mind?
If you are interested in doing so, I won't stop you.
Right. I mean, I think you are, the one of the most inside, quote unquote, insider civilians, quote unquote, in that I know ever in beer. You've had a podcast on beer for 6, 7, 8 years. How long?
It's a little more than 8.
Yeah, okay, long time. Beer Download, also on Lumpen Radio with Matt Arata, who was on last week, and you also are on the board of the Chicago Beer Society, one of the older beer societies and grander ones, I would say, in the country.
Taking a direction you don't always agree with these days, but
that's right. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Former president. Now you're a board member. Remain a board member and very active to varying degrees, depending on what's going on in your life. Also, you took and passed both the BJCP and Cicerone exam, more or less blind, pass them? You might have studied like the day of or the day before.
Well, I had done some BJCP judging before I took the tasting exam, which is the more challenging, maybe. The 200 question BJCP exam, for anyone who's not taken it, it's intense because it's 200 questions and it's 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, that's 18 seconds per question, which some of the questions you can't read in that amount of time.
Right.
And the whole point of that is that you can't look stuff up.
Because it's online. Yeah.
Right, because otherwise, anyone could just look things up and then pass the test. So they want you to do it from memory. That was a test that I definitely had to, tell my wife, I need you to take the kids. I need an hour alone with the computer. But the BJ or the Cicerone certified beer server exam, yeah. I thought, I'll just, and I was at my son's little league practice with my infant daughter on my lap, and I took it on my phone, and that one is doable because they also give you an hour, but there's only 30 questions or something, and it's
what I meant is though also you're a certified Cicerone, you're a level 2 Cicerone. That is what you passed blind as well, more or less blind. We'll call it.
Right. I mean, it was
impressive.
I wanted to see, I knew what I knew, and I was curious, what did it mean to be a certified Cicerone? How hard was that test? I didn't know if I would pass it or not. And coming out of that experience, it's a pretty significant test. I felt I had done well on some parts and poorly on others. I was glad to have passed, but I remember taking my professional engineering exam, and I felt a similar way. I came out of that test and thought, well, I might have passed that and I might not have. And I mean, it's the Cicerone. It was a 2-part exam that took several hours. And that's how the professional engineering exam is too. And I thought it was funny how many similarities there were between the two. One, you have to go to college for and, have a 4-year degree. So there's that. But
yes. Am I missing any other accolades of yours?
I'm
beer accolades.
I'm not one to toot my own horn, at least not this evening. So I will just say thank you for the lovely introduction, sir.
Yeah. Is anything new with you?
It's always difficult to answer that question in any overly meaningful way if you haven't had a major life change. So I'll just go with what I often go with, which is that I traveled some recently. Actually took the whole family down to New Orleans for spring break, which was fun. It was going with a bunch of small children to New Orleans. It's obviously a different experience than I'd been there many times in college and subsequently for Mardi Gras. This is it's the first time I've ever been in New Orleans and stayed in a building. In the past, I had always slept under a bridge or in the bushes, urban camping, we would call it in college. And I always enjoyed that. I always enjoyed it quite a bit. But I knew that this time around we'd probably need to do something a little different than that. So we got an Airbnb. And, New Orleans, I think, is, so it's a southern city. They're seeing a similar, boom in small beer production, just like everybody else is. But they seem like they're maybe a little bit ahead of the curve as far as light, easy drinking stuff being widely available from the small producers because it's hot down there, and you don't always want a giant bitter IPA or a heavy dessert stout. And it's interesting to me to come back up north and see that in some ways we look like we're catching up to kind of where they've already been, which is, even though they came maybe later to the craft beer table, they sort of cut to the chase. Leapfrogging, you would call it, if it was
Yeah, they. But any favorites there or just?
So there was a brewery called Great Raft out of Shreveport, and they had
okay.
the beers were perfectly tasty. There was none that I thought were amazing, but I really liked their branding a lot. They were in cans, which is important because in New Orleans you can just wander around and drink beer on the street and no one minds. It's only civilized city in North America, or at least the United States that I'm aware of. There was one in particular called Reasonably Corrupt, which I just really dug the name, and it was a Schwartz beer, which you don't see real overly often, and it was good.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for making it on the show. It's always nice having you on here.
Always fun to take a Thursday evening to come spend
Yes.
time with the assembled insiders.
Now, my next guest is Mr. Adam Vavrick, Beer Adam, of the Publican Restaurants and more. Long-time Chicago beer guy. What's up with you, Adam? How you been, man?
Super good. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Yeah, man.
Super good. Busy. We've had a lot going on. Opening up Big Star Wrigleyville, which is pretty fun. We'll have to talk about the ins and outs of that another time, but it's pretty cool. And then just prepping for this California dinner, which has been insane.
Yeah, I was curious. Like, I saw something briefly about that. You're doing something with Firestone, and I was curious to get details because they're always a brewery that's interesting to watch. They put out a lot of good stuff.
They're one of my favorites, and I say that unabashedly as a fan, not as an industry member, But yeah, I do a series of collaboration beers with breweries for the Publican, and last year I flew out to Buellton and made a beer with Jim and Jeffers and Bo, and we blended a bunch of different beers together, and then zested and juiced 1,000 pounds of Ojai Pixie tangerines, which sucked.
Yeah, like how did that physically get done?
So I bought 2 microplanes when literally I got off the plane at LAX, got my rental car, and went to a chef's warehouse, and I grabbed 2 microplanes.
You went from a macroplane to a microplane?
Nice. Very well done.
Mm-hmm.
And drove up to Buellton, and I got there, and I don't know if you know what 1,000 pounds of tangerines looks like.
It looks like probably an awful dang lot of tangerines.
It's a pallet of boxes.
Yeah.
And, tangerines are very small. And so doing them by hand was not going to happen, although it was really funny to kind of watch them go, well, this is the most collaborative beer we've ever done because, I'm flying out, I'm going to work. And Jim actually had a great idea of, I don't know how OSHA compliant this is, but we duct taped one of the microplanes to a Sawzall and then strapped it down to pallets that were stacked up.
That's smart.
And so I zested.
As long as you don't zest your hand.
We had strong gloves, and I managed to not impale myself during the 9 hours of zesting. And then the next day, came back and juiced the remainder of them. So it was 10 pounds. That was all for 10 pounds of zest, which is just ridiculous. And then we did a barrel of juice, and we blended the 3 beers together and threw them into oak, into a 20 hectoliter oval with the juice and the zest, where they sat for just under 13 months. And it got to the point where they were comfortable with it, and they mailed me a sample of it, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And so they packaged it, and 97 cases of bottles are happening and being only sold out in Cali. So rare whales, I think that's what you guys call them nowadays.
Yep.
And then the rest is being kegged off and sent here. But to celebrate it, we were trying to figure out what to do, and their national sales guy Dave Macon was like, well, what if we did like a beer dinner? And beer dinners are just so
So
played out.
2015.
Yeah, and I was like, no way, F that. How about we take the Publican and we take it to California? And so myself and the chefs collaborated on a menu, 5 courses, and created a Publican menu in California. So we're making some of the stuff and bringing it there. They're making some of the stuff and bringing it there, and like the vinaigrettes and whatever. And Jim and I both, and Jeffers, of course, the 3 of us went back and forth through email, and
Jim and Jeffers being Firestone
from
Walker
Firestone
people.
Walker Buellton, yeah. Jim Crooks and Jeffers Richardson, the barrel masters at Buellton. And so we came up with each dish has a separate pairing for both a comparison sake and a contrast. So the dinner is just ridiculous. There's not a ton of seats left, but they're going pretty fast. And it's in LA. So
Right.
I basically get to escape this wonderful Chicago weather that we're having for a week.
So
Yeah, right.
you used the word.
It's
before.
on Wednesday, April 25th at
Okay.
7 p.m.
Very soon. Very soon.
coming up.
at Firestone Walker Propagator in Venice Beach. Also, Josh Knoll has a book coming out.
That's true.
Yes.
You used the word. So you talked about a 20 hectoliter oval, which 20 hectoliters is like a bit more than 15 barrels. But what do you mean by an oval? Like what is?
So the actual shape of the foeder is in an oval shape.
Okay.
And you
like
guys can't
like
see.
an upright oval, or
Yeah, upright.
okay.
Yeah. So
like the ones they had at Bone. A lot of them at Bone were like that.
yeah, and the idea is you can cram more in a
Or a
in
couple of
row.
them were.
I sound filtered.
Yeah.
You notice that too?
Yeah. The,
like there's-
the headphones sounds weird.
Yeah. it's
They
like-
do sound weird.
Okay. Anyway, but yeah, so it's upright, so you can fit more in a row. They just happen to get them. I think it's a Saxon or something like that. SAXUN or UM. I think that might be the brand. But it's a 20 hectoliter foeder at the end
right.
of the
It's
day.
like a giant wooden barrel / tank, depending on how you want to think about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And the blend is all beer that came out of wood too. So like various sizes and shapes and so on.
And so in the end, could you taste the 10 pounds of zest?
Oh man, you can taste it so hard. It's awesome. Like when they sent me an uncarbonated sample, it honestly sounds like there's a high pass filter on my voice somewhere. But
You got to sound deep and low and sexy.
I'm not you. I would love to be, but I cannot be. I don't have that voice. I have a face for radio though.
Always a good thing.
Yeah, but you can it comes out. You can smell it. You can taste it. It's absolutely there. It's good acidity. I mean, the whole idea behind this was honestly inspired by a grilled yellowtail dish that we had on last year, and I'm not a huge seafood eater, and it was incredible. And it had like citrus on there, and it had avocado, so it was like fat and acid and all these flavors. And I went, oh man, I have to do a beer like this. It's incredible. So that's what's up with me.
But no avocados or fish in the beer, I hope.
Neither, although that dish is basically being replicated for the dinner.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And what beer did you pour me, Adam? Could you lift it up and show me what it was?
Absolutely. You are drinking Valentine's Burton Ale 2016, which is 11.3%.
Yeah,
so,
it tastes like a barley wine. You gave me the entire bottle of it.
Yeah, I didn't realize
Thank
that.
you.
I thought it was just Valentine Ale. I did take a sip out of it prior.
Here,
It is
you can
delicious.
Pass it around
It's
if you want to
delicious.
try some.
So
yeah.
you're welcome to.
I will share that beer.
This is the recreation of the original Ballantine Burton Ale, which was the one that they did. They kept it in these big oak tanks, and then they would bottle off a little bit and like give it away to the New York Yankees or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to try some of the really old stuff, which
Very traditional to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it
very
was-
English. Very English.
it was really fun. It wasn't that good after 65 years. I'm told some bottles are. The one I had wasn't, but yeah, I mean it's it's like a barley wine. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Chris doesn't like it in this warm studio environment that we're participating in.
It's fine.
So, what beer have you had lately that you did like, Chris?
Yeah. Thanks. Nice segue.
Love that.
I've had a whole bunch of beers lately that I've really liked. But I think, thank you. I don't think I said this last week. That's kind of bad that I don't remember. The Braupacht.
This is the show you've been.
Oh, I have that on draft right now. That's great.
Yeah, Braupacht from Weihenstephan and Sierra Nevada. Their Hefeweizen collab is excellent. It's I just think two masters of that style coming together, and they there's definitely, I think they dry hop it, but there's also a kettle hop to it as well.
I don't think there's a dry hop, but it's Tettenang, or I'm sorry, Hallertauer Tradition, or maybe it's Tettenang, and then it's Chinook and Amarillo up on top.
It's definitely hopped, and I get it more in the kettle hop and also in the bitterness. But the bitterness, it's definitely
This is a Hefeweizen?
works. Yeah, it
Yeah.
works with the beer though. It gives it a nice kind of crisp finish to it, just a hint, and it's really nice. It's noticeable, and it goes down like scary easy. Like you can drink it really effortlessly, and
Yeah.
it's very tasty.
It's pretty high for Hefeweizen too. It's
like
at 6.5. Yeah.
So yeah, I've had that, and then just today I had the Jester King and Scratch collab that they brewed, I believe, 2 years ago, and then just released in the bottles early this year. literally wild beer. A lot of kind of like pine and eucalyptus, funky, a little skunky. Just a really cool beer that I had just today. So that was also really, really cool. How about either of you guys?
I heard all this eucalyptus and stuff. I'm sorry that I was pouring a beer and missed the brewery. What was the beer?
It was a collaboration between Jester King and Scratch that they brewed
That makes sense.
2 years ago, and they just now released the bottles. So
Okay. I could certainly see where that would probably not taste like your standard beer.
no, it was a very piney's not quite right. It had that kind of scratchiness to it, but also like a Jester King Wild Ale. Very, very cool stuff. But how about either of you guys? Any beers that you've had lately that you've been enjoying or that you're anticipating?
Zombie Dust is pretty nice.
It is a good beer.
I'm
I'm
pretty lusty.
I'm ISO. If anyone.
Actually, on the eucalyptus note, the Trefontaine Trappist beer, the newest Trappist brewery to open up in Rome, theirs is a triple with eucalyptus, and that's pretty cool. It comes through a lot
They
of.
use leaves?
I don't know how they're getting it in there, to be quite honest. But either way, there's eucalyptus in it, and a lot of those triples have that kind of interesting, kind of minty thing going on in the background. This almost adds. It's almost like aloe, like fresh aloe leaf or something like that that's in there, and it's a pretty cool beer. I thought it was really interesting. It's great with food, but it was an interesting take on a Trappist style from an actual Trappist brewery. That's I hesitate to say innovation because I don't want to lead to the slippery slope of like, well, what could Trappist be? But I don't know. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's certainly something. That is cool. How about you, Steve?
So I wouldn't typically do this, but I just opened a Brewery Tarot. So like that's their new, I presume it's based off of the Earth, their Orchard Wit. And I picked this up at I always get confused, the Beer Cellar, which is in Glen Ellen. It's not the Beer Temple. It's not the Cellar Door. All these places that I occasionally buy beer. And the it's kind of an unusual. It's in a 12-ounce bottle, or maybe it's pretty sure it's 12-ounce bottle, and it's like one of these like big thick affairs. Like it looks like a miniaturized 750 milliliter kind of thing. And
Is that what you poured me here, Steve?
yeah, and it's at a $4.99 price point, which is kind of unusual.
$3.75.
Okay, it's a $3.75, so it's 12.9 ounces.
Sounds like somebody made a mistake.
No. So like I spoke to Dave Hawley, who's the proprietor there.
Dave would not make a mistake.
And he said, yeah, it's really moving pretty good. Like in this bottle size at that price point, it's moving so much better than the Bombers and the 750 milliliters would. And I mean, I just as a customer, I was walking along and I bought a 6-pack of, I think, this Invasion, and then I was like, oh, $5 is like this interesting other. I just was like, yeah, what the heck? I'll give it a try. And then I thought it was interesting that I am clearly that typical customer because other people are doing the same thing. And it's so. I mean, you think of a wit, and a wit is just I mean, I really like wits, but they're pretty like.
So this
low-key.
is the beer I'm drinking.
Yeah, pretty
It's,
low.
It's pretty darn good for $5. I mean, pretty darn good for
It's
anything.
great.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a wit that they do that they're aging in a foeder, tart wheat beer brewed with spices and aged in a foeder. So I don't know anything really more about it beyond that. Says it's, I don't know, it's got a bunch of stuff on here that I'm not going to read right now. But yeah, my first impression is this is a pretty nice sour beer. It's not some sour beers they're quite acidic to the point where like I can literally feel it going down my esophagus. That's become more common for me, which I don't really care for. I mean, they can be fun to take a sip of, but I don't want a glass.
Getting older.
That's true. And this is not doing that to me, but it is presenting me with a bunch of interesting aromatics and flavors, and I can dig that in $5 for one bottle.
I totally agree. I'm also glad to see that a lot of these American breweries who are making wild ales, a lot of the best ones, I should say, of kind of like the second wave of sour beer producers. So not the Jolly Pumpkins, not the Russian Rivers or Lost Abbeys, but like the breweries and places like De Garde and Crooked Stave and Side Project and places like that are I've noticed starting to pull back on the sourness. I felt that it went way too far as of maybe even as recently as still kind of happening, where some of these beers that I thought were amazing, and even some De Garde stuff, which I think that is one of the best breweries in the world, literally. I was having their stuff after you and I visited that place and were blown away by it, Steve, and I noticed it was getting intensely sour, and I was thinking, I wonder if it's is their brewery getting away from them? They don't pitch yeast, stuff like that, and they've started to pull it back. And I've noticed a lot of other breweries are too, and I hope that becomes a trend, because to me it seemed like they were brewing beers, perhaps unknowingly or unintentionally, for tickers. They were brewing beers that got really high scores when you drank an ounce of it.
Because they're super intense.
And they were at festivals, they were at bottle shares, they were at, all these things.
Right.
And they're like, they like this one even more than the last one because it's more sour. But you can't drink those beers. I was at a beer fest or a beer dinner in Washington, D.C., where there were it was one of the most insane, heavy-hitting sour brewery events I'd ever been to, and I won't say who was there, but all the big ones were there. And the brewery I thought showed the best was Oxbow, because they were restrained. They never kind of went over the top, and it wasn't a bottle share. This was a brewery. This was a bar event where you were getting glasses of this beer, and we had things that it was for the Craft Brewers Conference. So were there beers that were, top 20 sour beers on, Untapped or Rate Beer, stuff like that, that we just weren't really interested in finishing and wanted to get more Oxbow. And that to me was kind of like an aha moment. I was like, these beers are getting too sour, and maybe it is that I'm getting too old, Adam.
No,
but I think that things have been getting more acidic.
I think it's honestly we saw the same thing in barrel aged stuff and imperial stouts, and we saw the same thing in imperial IPAs. It's all the same thing. At some point, you get burned out on doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you kind of go back and dial it back to the same. You still want the same flavors, but you don't want to think about it as much. You don't want it to destroy you as much. I mean, you look at the IPA to Imperial IPA to Session IPA trend, it's kind of the same thing. It's why we're seeing Session Sours out there for the same reason. You want drinkability. Drinkability is one of those things that macro brewers have nailed. Whether or not you like the beer or not, you can crush 12 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of my whole point about that. But yeah, it makes sense. I just want to point out, I love the fact that that's so cheap. At $4, $5, that's awesome, because the brewery they've been in the market now in the Chicago market for 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And when they came in, I remember pushing them on my shelves. They were really pushing that envelope for a very long time, and probably right around the time you were opening too. They were putting $32 bottles on the shelf, and and then they started pushing even harder to that spectrum, or that end of the spectrum, by releasing some of the stuff that was only for the California market or the rare market or whatever, and really
they
pushing
have a reserve society,
exactly,
with multiple tiers in it. They very much had a wine club model.
What I think they did is they bifurcated their market into so many different unique consumer areas that as a whole people ended up buying less. And I think that you see that bearing out on the shelf now with this Tarot series as an example.
Which, to get back to what you were saying before, Steve, so Tarot is their wild series. So if it's from the wild side of things, it's going to be Tarot, and then everything else is labeled as just kind of the brewery.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about the branding of it. I think it all gets kind of muddled, but it is interesting that they're designating their wild stuff from their non-wild stuff as two separate sides of the same thing.
And
It's
I mean, we're
interesting.
seeing local breweries doing that too. Like Unane is doing it with Hubbard's Cove.
Yeah.
But I guess my point is it's a lot of SKUs, and if all your SKUs are $20-$30, you're really limiting your market.
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
not
their
a-
stuff started, to use the parlance of our time, turning it up on the shelves because they had so many $20 750s, and people and
people don't drink like that right now.
and there's a lot of options to drink like that now, and it becomes difficult. So it's interesting to see these breweries. To me, this is an example of breweries actively trying to see where the market is going. And I talk to people like every day about this stuff, but I think I've even said it on the show. I personally have never felt more unsure about where the hell stuff is going than right now. It's crazy. I mean, and I have to say it. This is for you, Doug Valicki. The squeeze. The squeeze is definitely on right now, and people are trying new things as a result. And a lot of breweries that I've been talking to are doing different things. They're deviating from what they're doing. They're pivoting or just
having to do things
changing.
they wouldn't necessarily do. Or changing up
adapting.
their branding
They're adapting,
strategy.
which is a sign of a mature market, and they're all doing it in different ways. That's the thing. It's not that they're like a couple of years ago. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to cans. We're going to cans. We're going to cans. We're going to cans."
Yeah, but now you see all the guys that didn't go to cans freaking out about it because they're suddenly their market share is down and it's reactionary. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Right,
yes.
but I'm not like it. Seemed to be like there's definitely some lemming stuff going on, especially with a lot of the little guys. I think a lot of the little guys are just doing what all the other little guys are doing too, and I think that
maybe some lemming and some zeitgeist. Like a lot of people coming to the same places.
lemming might not be a fair.
It's like when you wind up naming your kid and then it winds up being the most popular name. And you're like, how did this happen? And it's like you didn't do it on purpose. Obviously, it just kind of
Right. Let me mention quickly, you're listening to 105.5 FM, WLPN LP Chicago, Lumpin' Radio. I am Chris Quinn. I am the host of this show, the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. And we've got a small crew. And I probably could have gotten a third. There was a snafu with two other guests. But I figured with the three of us, we could kind of kick back and just have plenty to talk about and have it really be like just sitting around and having beers and talking. So my guests are Adam Vavrick and Steve Mastny, and we've been talking about, just how breweries have been, not lemming, but I guess zeitgeist is definitely part of it. But now I see a lot of breweries doing things differently.
Does that guy have zombie dust? Does he have zombie dust?
Hey, there's been a Dust Brothers sighting.
outside the studio
Yeah.
windows.
Yeah, it's true.
Must have heard themselves being talked about.
Right.
The
Love
dust.
that. Absolutely love that.
Yeah. Is there any way if you could see if you could let them in if they want to come in? They might not want to come in.
That's Kate's dad. I would love to get
Oh.
Jack on the radio.
Okay. Well, I don't know
He's so
about
nice.
that. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand.
Ooh, I was going to say something about
Yeah.
this. Just that it's also really interesting, not just in this package format and rapid adaptation, but a lot of breweries are starting to resort to the pressures of the rest of the market, and not just consumer demand, but also retailer demand. Without getting overly specific, there are retailer demands are extraordinarily important when it comes to.
Put the doors open. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Retailer demands are really important when you think about brewery relationships, brewery partnerships, wholesaler partnerships, etc. Oh my God, you brought them.
Nice. There's food. You can put food on the table, just not liquids.
Yeah.
Mr. Vavrick
All right.
ordered some food earlier this evening, which he
I was late to-
dedicatedly came to the radio station before the food came.
Leave the doors open, guys.
and
It's really hot.
These,
Nobody's
these
out there.
beautiful people brought it to him.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
That was unnecessary.
One of whom is a Dust Brother.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a few guests. We've got Dusty, Shalal, and Kate Tronica here. Hello. How are you guys? Yeah. Yeah, well, and I don't know. I mean, they haven't been introduced before. So, anyway, what's up, Mike?
Yeah, I've been listening the whole time. I know exactly what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. Anyway,
Excellent. Glad to hear it.
Yeah, we read some hate
will have
mail that
no
you got
follow-up
earlier,
questions.
and some love mail as well.
I think I've gotten the most hate mail of anyone in the,
Yeah.
the Beer Temple universe.
You also were voted the #1 guest of all time.
Well, if-
there's plenty of
if you know
chairs
me,
out
I'm a-
there,
I'm a
guys. For
very
real, if you want to go
polarizing
out there and get a
figure.
chair, feel free. We were just talking about how these guys are just
Keep
shifting.
having the conversation.
Well, and-
I'll jump
Oh.
in when appropriate.
Well, you have what I'm saying is that you have larger retailers in the space that are now not necessarily forcing, but they're suggesting in various ways that breweries need to play in their space in order
Yeah.
to get the mind share, the mind share for the consumer that they need. And
So much nicer than throat share.
well, yeah,
That's Pepsi.
Yeah.
damn it. That's hilarious. But my other point on this means that you'll start to see. Speaking of Rev, you always talk about Doug. I always think about Don, their sales director, and I think about his constant comments about the race to the bottom. And when it comes to pricing and things like that, that price over there on that Taro beer is awesome. But I mean, we have a large retailer in the market running beers below cost. To get consumers in the door kind of thing. And that's something that a lot of craft breweries are, they're now pushing back on. They're like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to do that.
Are we talking about Target or someone else?
Yeah, we'll say Target. But, you're starting to see this come through where, it's in advertising and the advertisement you're trying to get the consumers in the door to buy in that section. And, let's be honest, most of us don't care what Budweiser has their beer priced at half the time or what Miller does or whatever. But
some
suddenly
people
when
do.
it's Rev or Half Acre or Pipeworks or any of the larger craft breweries in the market, suddenly if you start seeing them going down at $7.99 a 4-pack or, $6.99 a 6-pack, you're like, well, wait a minute. I normally pay $9 for that. And it's just to drive people in to fill up shopping carts. And that's a space that I haven't really seen smaller craft breweries play in. That hasn't happened. You've seen it
not
with
knowingly
price,
anyway.
Even knowingly or not knowingly, you just didn't really see it. I mean, part of the appeal for a lot of retailers for craft beer, and this is the way that craft beer was sold, both on premise and off for years, was that you can have that consumer pay those extra $2 or $3 on your ring per package, and no one's going to care. Mm-hmm. People care now.
I saw an ad for a brewery or a brand I'd never heard of.
Is this Two Hats?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you see
I
that?
saw the billboard on the way down here
down
tonight.
here.
Yeah.
The first time I've
Yeah.
ever seen it.
So the first time you ever hear of a beer is on a craft beer or something.
It's a light beer with fruit in it.
I don't know.
Fruit character is what
yeah.
it
So
is.
it's on a billboard off the highway, and it said, "Good beer or good beer
wait?
that's cheap beer that tastes
Cheap
good."
beer, why wait?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Clearly
But
their advertising
but
is
Google
effective.
it, and they're not hiding it though. It says immediately upon googling Miller.
Oh, it's a Miller brand.
Yeah.
I mean, it had to have been. Who can afford? I mean, it had to be a big guy. Who can afford a billboard like that, or who
Goose
would
Island
go
has
right to it?
billboards.
Exactly. Well, oh right, yes. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, all sorts of stuff is happening. I mean, people are more price conscious now. I think people are very fickle about style and format. Surprisingly,
Well, and I mean, it's funny because we're talking about a $5 $3.75, which on the one
Yeah.
hand is like not a bad value, and on the other hand, it's still a $30 6-pack, so it's
Yeah.
not exactly cheap.
Yeah, but that's where the market is now, where everybody's like, "Oh, that's great."
So cheap is relative.
Well, it's also no one has to or needs to do that math. There's nothing that overlaps in that way where like this $5 $3.75 is never going to be available to you in a volume drinking format.
Right. It is inherently a, do you want to pay $5 to try this beer? And you're like, yeah, sure. That's a good value proposition to me. And actually, now that I've been drinking it a while, it really reminds me, in 2012, Troy Casey was still brewing at Miller for AC Golden and put out an apricot beer that
I remember that.
I remember pairing it with the Transit of Venus, and that's why I know it was 2012. And this tastes like that, and it's really good.
Yeah, it's very good. $5 brewery, 375. I mean, it's pretty cool. We blew right past our little station ID, but we'll take a music break in just a bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about. Well, what should we talk about in this amount of time? Well, one of the things that we have not brought up on this show. You could just read some more reviews.
That was pretty riveting.
I could do that.
Yeah, why was Lucas the only one that didn't have a fake name? How do you know that person was really Lucas?
I don't. I just read their names. I think they were all real names. I think N1138 is a person. I think that is the person. That person's name is N1138.
Well, 1138 makes me think that they're Star Wars fans. But what if their parents were Star Wars fans, and then they named him that?
Yeah. I mean,
no, I think that person was a Star Wars fan and chose their own name.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Mike. So we've talked about Green Flash a lot, but we haven't talked about the latest and hugest chapter in this, which is Chapter 11. No, it's foreclosure.
Harsh.
So we were talking about it, and Dan Pichet was on and talking about how it looked like they were in, just judging by what was happening and by some of their EBITDA numbers, that they were not in a good position at all. I think even off the air, he was talking about how their financial position did not look good. Like it looked pretty catastrophic. And then days later, it was announced that the bank literally just foreclosed on them, and now they don't own the brewery anymore. They all their assets were essentially taken from them, and it does not exist. It's not the owners. Well, the brands exist, but Green Flash Brewing and Alpine Brewing Company have been dissolved. They don't exist anymore, and the bank has it and is now was looking for a buyer. I think they now have a buyer. They had a buyer lined up pretty quickly. So
is it going to be Pabst, the owner of all trademarks that go belly up in the United States?
Well, the other thing was
like Ballantyne.
I mean, now in hindsight, it looks like they were selling off all those other things piecemeal, but saying we're still fine. To essentially make it easier for them to unload later. The writing was on the wall. It just sounds like they might not have been completely forthright with what the heck was going on.
Right. I mean, if you're running a business and your goal is to continue the business and hopefully turn things around, and I mean, the last thing that you want to broadcast to everyone is the house is on fire. That's not what you do.
Yeah.
But
run
and if you get to the point where everything's being taken and like there's like all this publicity that's happening that you're not driving yourself, clearly things haven't really been well for a while.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. This was just like every other brewery or almost every other brewery. These were people who started this thing because they wanted to, thought it was cool, thought it was fun, and then they decided to do some expansion, and then they did it at a time that didn't work out real well, and all of a sudden, you're trying to pay this debt service and you can't, and that's no fun for anybody.
A lot of people are talking about that as like a sign of the beer apocalypse. I don't think that that's the case really at all, and there's a lot of things that we, again, in hindsight that you notice. I think Max, who works at the Beer Temple with me, noted that all these breweries who had opened up second breweries on the opposite coast where they started were top 10 BA breweries, top 5 BA breweries really, and then you had Green Flash, which was number 44.
Oscar Blues is in that same boat, and they seem to still be. I mean, they've partnered up with Cigar City, who I thought was going to be a flash in the pan coming into the Chicago market, and it seems like they're actually pulling through in some places because I'm seeing fresh date codes on some of the cans and stuff. So, counterexample.
For 6 months, though.
Yeah, but they also sold. I mean, they sold to a venture. They're owned by a venture capital firm now, right? What I got?
No, I mean, you think that has something to do positive for it?
No. I'm saying my example was how Green Flash was undersized for a brewery compared to the others who
To make
did
those
it.
leaps
To
into
make
the
those
other
leaps,
coasts.
and then Oscar Blues also did it. You're saying, but I'm saying, yeah, but then they sold.
Okay, all right.
So maybe they were severely strapped for cash
Not-
after that expansion.
Not
And-
an unreasonable observation.
I think their capital expenditure when it came to opening up those 2 spaces plus operating cellar was just ridiculous. And I think that moving to or from their flagship IPA to a double IPA as their flagship product was ridiculous. And I think that they made a lot of little missteps along the way that ultimately kind of sealed their fate.
Yeah, I mean, they needed to grow rapidly to continue on, and then they needed to find, we're not growing rapidly, let's try a
I
whole
think
bunch of
them
stuff.
Adding Alpine was part of that, like what now looks like a death spiral of we want more people to be paying attention to us, so we're buying this thing that everyone's paying attention to, and they did not deliver on what sending Alpine to the rest of the country.
As a
Yeah.
mild nerd, I never
Mild, huh?
mild. I never
You're just a
really
mild nerd.
Well,
You're mildly nerdy, or you like
No.
you like or you like English mild.
You're king of nerds.
I think you're actually
You've literally
both.
sat on a
You love
throne.
English milds, and you are a nerd.
if
You've
you let me
literally
finish
sat on
the
the
sentence,
throne
it
of
makes
nerds.
sense in context.
Why would we do that?
As a mild nerd within
We
the
sat on the
scene,
throne of nerds.
I didn't have the luxury of exploring all of Alpine's offerings before that happened. Like, I think I drank a Nelson at some point, or a double, like whatever. Like, I drank one, but I didn't drink it enough to, when it came into the market and I tasted it, I was like, great, that's awesome. And everybody else is like, what are you talking about? And, so I didn't have that.
What are you talking about insofar as you didn't appreciate as much as they thought you
Well,
did?
I didn't think that it was as bad as everybody else thought it was.
Oh, okay.
And
It was
that's
fine. It wasn't bad.
And again,
it just
we're
wasn't
talking
magic.
relative here. We're not saying the beer's bad, but in relation to what everybody says it was, apparently it didn't match the standards
Well,
that everybody else was expecting it to be.
It was
I guess
supposed
that's
to
kind
be
of my point.
revelatory, and when it came here,
It wasn't.
It was good.
Yeah, it was great beer. It
good.
didn't do anything other than anything else that
Oddly,
I had
though,
available to me.
The Nelson that just came in most recently before the announcement into the Chicago market, the Alpine Nelson, I should say, was one of the best. Was definitely the best batch I'd have post Green Flash.
Well, Nelson, the hop itself, is the most inconsistent hop
Yeah.
I've
Yep.
ever had to deal with, or any of us.
that
had
and
to deal
Amarillo.
with.
Nelson
Amarillo,
Sauvin, is that
Amarillo is much more consistent than Nelson is. Nelson has gone from being like this thing that
Magical,
was
yeah.
supposed to be transcendently beautiful to a thing that was very
Is
grassy.
it Nelson Sauvin and you're truncating it, or is that two
Yes.
different hop
Yes,
varieties?
yeah,
Same
okay.
thing.
Nelson Sauvin. To a thing that was very vegetal and much more noble than what it was billed as, back to a thing being beautiful. So I don't know if that building a beer that was supposed to be your one of your most recognized beers on that, not their fault, but it's an agricultural product that is incredibly inconsistent, and that is the most inconsistent one we've ever had to deal
Yeah.
with.
So speaking of inconsistencies, I've got one Green Flash thing I want to get in. I have at my house an unopened bottle of Rayon Vert with a fly in it. And
What year? Because I have 2012
how
on my
old?
menu right now,
Yeah.
and I want that, and I want to sell it for $120.
I'll drink that right now.
Right?
The first 2 years of Rayon Vert was some of the best
Yeah.
beer that's ever been made.
so
Yeah.
I agree that's why I had so much of it. And I believe that this was a 2011 bottle, but it might be 2010.
All right, I'll buy it
and
for more
it
than
has
that.
a
Hold
whole
on.
entire fly. And I contacted the brewery. And they
I'll pay twice.
said, well, that couldn't have possibly happened because this and the other. I'm like, look, I got a picture here. Look, I'm looking at
it's
it.
in there.
And I didn't like take the cap off and put the fly in. Like, no, like this is how it came. I almost opened it, and then I was like, what the heck? And so I still have it all these years later. And they told me they were going to send me a case of beer, and they never sent that case. And ever since then,
Well, Steve,
they've
they're
been
out
a
of
little
money,
bit
so-
lower in my eyes.
There you go. Now, I will say that there's some good news for people who like Rayon Vert. And
From this pink-
it's true.
Like
So,
opening a bottle and having nothing but foam in like 3
It's
or
only
4 different
flies.
glasses.
And 4 flies.
Rayon Vert, the Chicago market was by far the biggest market for Rayon Vert.
You
which
still
I
have some on
I
the shelf.
agree.
It's West Coast Matilda.
It's not that he still has
So-
some. They sent one pallet when they announced they were pulling from the market. They basically said, "What do you want?" And
The
Wendy
distributor
said,
bought all of it.
Yeah, they bought all of the.
All
I've
the
got
Rayon
it.
Vert.
I've got it at Public, and I'm sure you've got it at Beer Temple. Like,
They
yeah,
have-
it's
there's a bunch of it, and it's only in Chicago.
Well, they
as
made
far
those
as I know.
bottles
Post
for
pasteurization.
Rayon Vert. Like
Yeah.
that's why they got that distinctive bottle was to get the nice thick glass because it's an Orval.
that
like,
was.
Yeah.
Yep,
It was
and well, they
their
had to
own
switch because they had early on with that beer, they had some bottle exposures that I remember having to deal with. And it was around the same time that they switched from 6-packs to 4-packs, which, if you guys remember, Chris, I don't remember if Beer Temple was open at this time or not, but
You mean 4-packs to 6-packs?
6-packs. When they came into the market, they were in 6-packs.
Packs?
6-packs.
No, they were 4-packs under the 6.
No, they were 6-packs of
maybe you're right.
Green Flash IPA and whatever the red ale was, and
Palette
I think
Wrecker.
it's Palette
No.
Wrecker was a
No.
bomber.
The red IPA was the red IPA.
It was it had a name. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah,
but
there was
but yeah,
West
so
Coast
they were
IPA
they
and
were
there
in
was-
six
yeah.
called
packs,
red IPA.
and then they switched to 4-packs, and I remember it being a much ado because they were still charging $9.99, or that was the suggested retail. So they went from 6-pack bottle $9.99 to 4-pack bottle $9.99, and that was huge. And they honestly, to be fair, they led that kind of stream towards the 4-pack, slightly more ounces mentality that we're seeing in all the 16-ounce cans now, and they got pooped on pretty significantly for it.
Yeah.
In what circles were they
Uh,
instrumented on?
Mostly by retailers, and honestly, myself included, I pushed back on it pretty hard
On the
on the switch from 6-pack to 4-pack.
Did you think the beer wasn't worth that, or you thought that people wouldn't buy it for that?
It was a little bit of both. And
Or
I
the
was
pushback had to come from one of those.
well. The pushback came from the consumer because I used to stack it. It was a consistent 5K stack all the time, every day.
and then they went
do you think
back
that
to
was
6-packs.
And then-
but do you think that was like a price
They
thing?
moved
or do you
all
think
over
that
the place.
That
It was
was
a
a
pri-
relevance thing given how local beer got. In
That's
that
a hard
several
one. That's
years.
a really hard one to answer. I don't know the answer to that because
Because
I mean,
local beer
well,
at the same
wasn't
time, I'm
cheaper than
getting
that.
Daisy Cutter at the same time,
Right.
or Anti-Hero 6-packs are coming out a year later, or whatever.
I think they got caught up in a movement that they had no idea was happening.
They also increased
That's fair.
the
Yeah.
alcohol of all their beers when they moved
Well-
to 4-packs. Like all their beers got stronger.
not originally, but yes, that did happen.
Yeah. So let's take a break. Let's listen to some tunes. We've been talking, pretty much going off script until this most recent bullet point on the outline. But we'll take a break and then come back. We've got extra guests. We got some peanut gallery, so who knows where
Like
it's going to go.
95 people in here.
Yeah, at least.
It's the most popular show.
2 to 95.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll be back soon with more of the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. Welcome back to the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. I am Chris Quinn. I host this thing usually, and I am joined by a whole bunch of people. I guess Mike is now officially a guest, and I now have to, I think, introduce him first because he's the most senior, I think, more than you, Steve.
He's probably been here more often.
I've
He's
definitely
hosted more shows.
and
I believe.
Ed-
I've won the most Beer Temple awards.
That's true. And Ed has set the precedent that uninvited guests count. He set that precedent, so I can't be selective in how I enforce the rules. You know, if Ed would storm on, then he would have to be announced first because he storms on. He's been storming on less lately. He must be very busy with his new tap room. Anyway, I'm here with Mike Strong, Adam Vavrick, and Steve Masney. And we were talking about a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, I had an outline because we were going to talk about craft beer in China, but then something happened. And anyway, no, I'm kidding. I'm
Kate's
joking.
big in
totally,
China.
Totally.
He's actually been
I
on
was just doing
panels
that
with like
to
luminaries in China.
just jokingly make fun of not make jest with Kate. But anyway, neither here nor there. My point being, so we have an outline, and I want to go off. This is me taking the outline and crumpling it up. Actually, it's not. We don't have a paper outline.
How'd you guys afford a Foley guy?
Yeah, it's true.
That's amazing. The production value is super high.
You don't remember when Ed had the little machine that he was using?
Foley?
Yeah, Ed Foley.
Ed Foley's been in here for a long time.
Yeah, he lives under the
Ed
desk here.
Marzewski's a wholly different person.
Yes. We do have a letter. We'll do a quick letter segment. I had a handwritten letter given to me in person.
It's actually a letter this time. It's
Yeah.
not a digital letter.
No, it's a real letter.
That looks a lot like a receipt.
Yeah, I think he might have
It
written
says-
it quickly at the shop.
it
and
says-
handed it
kinda
to
looks
me.
like a
But I
fake
didn't see him
outline.
do it.
All right.
He handed me, he said, "Here is a handwritten letter, hand delivered." And I said, "Okay, cool." And then he kind of walked away.
It's like
And
a
then
postcard.
it
If you
said-
write it on a coaster and put a stamp on it, counts as a
It
postcard.
said
There you
Founders
are.
Breakfast Stout, 8 times 2.
So he
16.
said, so if you do want to leave, write us a letter, you can email it. You can write us an
Just
electronic
email
letter.
us.
Yeah, it's insiders@craftbeertemple.com or 3218 South Morgan Street. Yeah, you can leave both the doors open, actually, so you can get some airflow going if you want.
And that's how you
Nobody's
send
out
the
there.
letter, right
Yeah,
to the
mhm.
doors.
Yeah, there you go. 3218
Just send it to Bridgeport. It will get
South
here.
Morgan. Just say it's Ed Marzewski. Say Eddie Marzewski, and it'll get here.
put
But
beer,
Co-Prosperity
Chicago,
Sphere,
and it'll show up at one
3219
of
South
3
Morgan,
places.
Chicago 60608, and you can put it to the Beer Temple. We haven't gotten a handwritten letter in a little bit, but anyway, and mailed.
Chris
but this
says
one,
visibly hurt.
it said
that mailed?
it just
Does
says
it have a stamp
ISO, more malt, less any IPA. That was the whole of the letter. But I've been holding on to it.
so you wrote
Can
that
I see
for
that?
yourself.
May I see that, please?
You may see that. Yeah, it is a handwritten letter, and it was
It
given
does
to
exist. It's real.
me. So
Wait, hold on. You're missing a part of it.
what?
It says any IPA.
Yeah, I said any
N-E.
IPA.
And the letters
Any
N-E.
IPA.
A-N-Y or North New England.
Yes, any IPA.
That's who signed it.
Any. So here's what I want to talk about. We've got two people here, Vav and Masney, who
I'm also a person.
and me. No, but we've got two of them who.
I
Let's not
wasn't
go off the
invited,
rails
but I'm a
quite yet,
person.
because I think this could be an interesting discussion. I was thinking about it just today, and who I think have strong feelings about Bourbon County. I also think, and I just read a review that says, don't talk about, pay to play in InBev or something like that. So I had to not
Do you want to talk about
oblige them.
zombie dust?
No, so here's what I want to talk about, because Adam,
talking about zombie
for those of you who don't know, I think as much as probably one of the most influential people in the kind of retail experience that Black Friday for Bourbon County has become is
Arguably the architect of Black Friday.
Yeah,
the couple
arguably.
weeks.
With Eric Hobbs.
Yeah.
Credit
He
where
would
credit is
argue
due.
Yep.
before that he's being quiet.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. But anyway, so we've got Adam, who has a long history with Bourbon County, and now we have Steve, who you've been espousing that beer's finer qualities for many, many years. I also have done the same, but here's what's happening. It's just interesting. I've had people come into the shop from out of state at this point more times than I can count this year, and mentioned to me that Bourbon County is seemingly anywhere except for Chicago is just stacked as far as the eye can see, according to these people, all over the place. And it is what they said it was going to be a couple years ago, although probably not what they, in a way, they want it to be, a year-round beer. Goose Island had said, we're hoping this could be a year-round beer.
It
and apparently
used to
it
be.
is, yeah.
08 to 09.
Right. So it sounds to back to that. So it's just very curious, and it's not just Bourbon County. I also noticed. KBS was a beer that would, I would say, it was of the bigger breweries, the beer that went the fastest for our store, because we didn't get the huge quantities that we used to get of Bourbon County. And it would just go so darn fast. And now we thought it was going to happen, and it didn't. It just kind of stuck around for a little while. I mean, a little while. And
How long is a little while?
we probably had it for 5 or 6 days. We might have had it for longer. I don't know. But
Can we reset
It used to last
the
an
fact
hour.
that a beer lasting 5 or 6 days is fast. So
I still have BCS on the menu at Anchor.
right. So, Parabola from Firestone Walker came out this week, or was made available, I should say, to us this week. And we, were thinking about those two things, and we still got quite a bit of it, and put it on the shelf. And what do you think happened? Half of it evaporated in a day, and that one was always a little slower than the others.
Is
So
it from California or Missouri?
the Firestone,
The
Parabola,
Parabola, yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know.
It was from Missouri last year.
Wait, what?
Okay, it's back to
Back to
Cali.
Firestone.
Did they age that in Missouri last year?
Yeah, the 2017 says Missouri on there.
I didn't hear that.
Interesting.
That's
At Boulevard.
mind-boggling.
I heard that from. It's killing me. I'm blanking on his name. The gentleman who worked for you until very recently.
Nick Conti.
Nicholas.
Yes, thank you.
Interesting. My question is, or what I wanted to talk about, I don't have a question, was, I think there's definitely something there. The fact that this beer is now, Bourbon County being, that was the big whale, other than these uber tiny breweries, and I'll put Cantillon as an uber tiny brewery. It is an uber tiny brewery.
Well, which used to sit on the shelf, not next to, but in the same store as Bourbon County.
Sure.
For months, years
Right.
on end.
I still have pictures.
Right. So, but you know what I'm saying. Other than guys who just literally are essentially trying to do that, trying to play the scarcity game, or just literally cannot meet demand because they just can't make a lot of beer. This used to be the big one, and now it's just kind of all over the place.
Well,
and
but
not selling. And I'm just curious. I'm curious if they have tried to make a lot of it because they want to sell a lot of it, and it's a highly profitable brand for them. And they've also, I'm curious if they have watered down their own brand, not just by making it, but by detracting from the scarcity or rare appeal that some of these collectors have by putting out variants that also change and are regionally available or unavailable. And then the regular, people maybe don't want as much
think the
anymore.
majority
And
of that-
I cut Steve off, so I think you get the first word.
But Mike has seniority, right? Because he's been here.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Well, I have the most seniority, so Steve gets to talk.
I've hosted a lot of shows. So.
we were, and when I say we, I mean, myself on my show, and I think many people collectively were saying there's not enough Bourbon County. It's not cool that it's, we're sitting here in 2011. They've been purchased by AB InBev. You can't buy this stuff. They need to make more. And what do? They have a 3-acre aging facility. I mean, you
Incredible.
hear about 145,000 square feet. It's like, what does that mean? It's 3 acres. It's like 3 very large parcels
giant.
of property all under a roof that they have filled with barrels. And it's not all Bourbon County. It's, there's some other stuff. But
Vast majority.
they started making a lot of this stuff. And for a while, they still could not keep up with demand. And now it sounds like they have kind of turned the corner on that, maybe in a way that they're not happy about because they've had this giant facility for a while, and yet now perhaps there's less of this prestige about it. But this was always my hope. Like, I wanted to be able to go to the store and buy a beer if I wanted to drink it, and that just wasn't a thing for a while there. And there was a mania around a lot of different beers, and there still is. And you can talk about Bourbon County and is it the same, is it not? But it's caught up in this larger thing, which is that people can only chase scarcity for so long, and maybe like a new group of people comes with new enthusiasm and they're chasing Northeast IPAs instead of stouts or whatever. But I think it is a fundamentally good thing that you can go to the store and buy a beer that you want to buy. Like, that is just good from a
I agree.
consumer standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think some of it is also. I think it's the fact that it happened is good for the consumer. Is it what Goose Island intended?
Yes.
Is very different. I
What
think
Goose Island intended or what ABI intended? Because ABI intention is to top crop everyone who is getting above what they can charge for what a beer is considered for any given style. So if they thought they could reproduce a hazy IPA,
Wild goose to do wrapped cans.
Oh, that's a different thing.
that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But when you have a beer that is so far outside of the normal pricing range on its own merit, they purchased it, and then they're cutting the price down. So how much does a 500 milliliter bottle of Bourbon County Stout cost now?
$9.99, I think, yeah.
$10.99. We were all up in
$10.99
arms
maybe.
because it costs $60 to make rare. But $10.99 at a 500 milliliter bottle is uncompetable for a lot of breweries who spend a lot of time, effort, and money on these beers. So what they're doing is they're driving the price of our most expensive beers down. You're shaking your head like it's not true?
No,
It's not true because they a while ago. I'm sorry, Kate. I'll let you talk in a moment. A while ago, were selling their price per ounce 5 years ago was less. I mean, when they were in
Goose
4
Island
packs,
was?
yeah, they were in
Of
4
Bourbon
packs.
County
Yes,
is less
Yep.
than it is now.
Yes,
It was $9.99 4-packs on my shelf in stacks year round.
I don't
So you
think
don't
that's
think
their
so you guys don't think they
major
control the
objective
price
at
of
this
barrel aged
point.
beer right now?
I don't know about that. Hold on.
So
There's many different
they
things
get to
going
control
on.
the price of barrel aged beer
I don't know if they
on any sort of
control it.
distributed
No, Revolution
level
does.
No.
in Chicago. But
Revolution does.
I
Yeah.
agree with
in
that, Emma.
Chicago, but bigger than that. Like, so all of us love barrel aged beer. Who controls the price of barrel aged beer across the country now?
I think they
Who
are the
controls
measuring
consumer?
stick.
That's not
Measuring
true.
stick.
That's just not true.
Okay.
It's the guy who can sell it to you for cheaper. So the consumer wants to buy it for cheaper. So great. They control it now, and all of us who thought our barrel-aged beer was very valuable.
I think barrel aged
gonna
beer is an
lose.
interesting case point where it's
That's
not
what we're
necessarily
talking
the exactly. I'm jumping in, obviously, but I feel like it's not. It's like the
Hey,
case
Kate.
point is not necessarily about like getting to the lowest possible
That's
margin.
what they're about, is about controlling
That's
the
what
way
they're
to
doing,
price
but I
these
don't think that
beers.
necessarily controls the point of barrel aged beer. Like I don't think that it's a race to the absolute lowest common denominator for that style of beer.
I think we might be.
No, I'm not saying
we
that.
might be
I'm
have
saying-
different
I think
definitions of
It's a
control
race to
as
control
well.
of the
Yeah.
price of that
Well,
beer.
can you talk about what you
What-
mean by control, maybe?
Well, when they own the spigot on 90% of the bourbon barrel-aged beer in the country, they control what people believe it's worth.
Okay, so they can basically they are
If
the
they put the
measuring
beer
stick.
out at $14, it's worth $14. If they put it out at $9.99, it's worth $9.99.
Right, for a 500 mil. But they've done a lot of stuff to make it very hard for a consumer to make an apples to apples correlation because nobody else is putting out their stuff in those customized bottles, which a lot of people probably
Do
don't
you
know
really
the
think
ounces.
that people actually put value on the fact that it's a customized bottle?
Mike, I need
no,
to push back
that's
on
not what
this.
I meant.
Goose Island used to sell that beer for
Island did, right?
$17.99
Yeah,
for
I remember
4
that.
of them.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that was pre-ABI. ABI substantially raised the price.
Yes.
So I think that argues against what you're saying. ABI came in and said, hey, we could charge more for this beer, so we will. If they had kept the prices the same, it would be what you're saying, but worse. If they had kept it at $17.99 for a 4-pack, it would be even harder for another smaller brewery to. And I genuinely
So
want to
we're
hear what
gonna
Kate's talking about with
ignore
this.
their-
I don't know what you're talking about, so I really want to know. But
Oh
Okay,
man.
sorry.
Sorry. What I was just going to talk about was just that the fact that they are buying smaller equipment and they're using the labelers and the same type of equipment that smaller craft breweries are using now. So it's an interesting push. So their marketing team is basically saying that they're trying to be, quote, more urban. And what that means to them is having more mobility, which means for a large ABI company, they're using the exact same equipment. They're basically downgrading to use the equipment that craft breweries can afford. So they're looking like craft beer, and they're basically packaging like craft beer, and they're doing everything that craft beer does. They're moving like it, so they don't have to. They can afford all these crazy different. All right, so the wrapped cans. The reason why people use wrapped cans initially is not because
Talk about that just a bit for people who might not know what that means.
So the idea of the wrapped cans, it's something that's based on something more economic than it is aesthetics.
And what that is. So a wrapped can is not something where the can is actually printed on. It's either shrink wrapped or it's a sticker that you stick on it.
Yeah,
That's all.
Simple, super easy, super not a big deal. But the idea is just that it allows for more mobility. So if you're going to invest in a single canning line as a small independent craft brewery, you're going to invest in one. You're going to either do bottles, you're going to do cans, and that's going to be it. And if you're going to do cans, the issue is that if you're going to pre-print cans, you have to be able to have the capital to purchase the entire truckload of cans.
The minimum
shipping
order.
Container.
The minimum
a
order,
minimum order of cans is a shipping container, which means you're pre-purchasing this thing. So you need to have that capital, which is difficult for a lot of small craft breweries to do. So kind of what the go around, the workaround has been for so long is to get just sort of blanks. So you order the
A blank can.
Blank can. There's no printing on it, and then you get labels that just wrap around it. It's a machine. Most breweries are used one made by Maheen, which is the same bottling company. But it allows for mobility and it allows for flexibility, which is the agility that craft breweries have had over macro breweries for a long time.
And what you're saying is now Goose Island is buying that same equipment so they have the same agility, even though presumably they don't need to. Although who knows what their internal budgets are. I would agree with you. I don't want to say definitively they don't need it, but maybe.
That agility is a marketing budget for them, though.
I would
Exactly.
I would tend to agree, but I'm just putting it out
We
there.
buy those things
that,
because we have to put the beer in those cans.
yes.
It's the
They're
best
buying
equipment
saying,
that we
Mike.
They're
could
buying them
possibly
so
get.
people like us are like, hey, they're dry hopping 312. They're doing cool stuff.
Probably. But who knows? Maybe they have a budget that they cannot do it until next year, and this is a stopgap.
I don't know why this
I'm
is a
just
zero-sum game. Why
not.
it can't be both. Like,
Yeah.
why you can't have
Adam.
production-based... What?
No, man.
But it is. It really is. You have the same brewers that are innovating in most of the ways that they've been doing for years, and now they have the capital to do it. They are in a better position and a better foothold in the market than you are. That's all it is.
But
I'm not saying
where that money goes is the evil part.
Yeah,
It
but
is
I'm not
a problem.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about
But
this
it
in a
has to be
vacuum right
part
now.
of the conversation.
Well, if we're going to do that, then we have to consider where all your money goes every time you buy any craft beer that's distributed by a Bud House or a Miller House, because a
Sure,
quarter of that
let's
bit
talk
goes
about
to well,
let's not talk
we
about
can,
it. But yeah.
but
to try to defend Goose, to lend the other side of the thing here. So I'm looking at a half acre product, which is in a wrapped can, Half Acre does lots of cans that are not wrapped. I personally am not a fan of wrapped cans. I think that they make the beer look poor. I'm looking at a Moonraker beer that I'm like, I would never ever buy this because it looks like someone who doesn't know what they're doing packaged this beer. And that's just me having drunk beer
I
for a
think
long
that
time.
is just you. I mean, I think there is a whole nother group that likes that look.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get that.
Anyway, go on.
And what I'm saying is that Half Acre has a wrapped can here, even though they have better cans. And it's not because they're trying to look cool. It's because they want to make a smaller amount of this beer.
That's
and
not true.
Goose can legitimately make a smaller amount of beer.
Well, it's the nimbleness to be able to present a beer that people want
Yeah.
in the package they currently want. Half Acre
Absolutely.
is very capable of making that same beer, as are we in Bombers. But people will not
Nobody
buy
wants
the same beers in
Bombers.
Bombers.
Yeah. People want
So-
16-ounce cans right now. And just to step back and
With a sticker on them. I mean,
me-
they do want them.
But Half Acre makes.
That's the hottest
Right,
package
but printed
in beer
can
right
versus-
now.
You can't
is
be as
a
nimble with a
stickered
printed
16-ounce
can
can.
as
Right.
you can with a label.
But to step back real quick, just to the start of this Bourbon County
Sure.
conversation that kicked the whole thing off, we were talking about the availability, and wasn't that the whole plan for it to be available? You remember maybe an hour and a half ago I said something about bifurcating your market when it came
Yeah.
to what the brewery did. I think Goose did the exact same thing. They had lightning in a bottle, and they ruined it. Maybe not ruined it, but they definitely threw away what they had with having that commodity package that was consumer friendly. A 16-ounce whatever bottle with all the crap on it, 99% of the people don't care. And I get it. It's pretty, and you can get a couple of extra dollars out of it at retail. I mean, it is what it is. But it was $9.99 in 4-packs way before it blew up. It should be $9.99 in 4-packs now. And when that happens,
not be.
when that happens, then I'll take an
too
argument for them
it's too
controlling
expensive to put
for them
that in
controlling
that
it.
4-pack.
Sure, but look at Revolution with their 6-pack barrel aged series. They are running the barrel aged market in the city right now. And honestly, I see that as a trend going forward. I've been suggesting this to breweries.
See
for
what
ages.
as a trend?
Commodity package
Okay.
for
Commodity package,
for
not Rev
Imperial Stout,
running.
not necessarily Rev, but anybody
wanted you to
putting it
clarify
consumer.
what-
yeah,
what
yeah,
you
yeah,
thought.
yeah.
I
It's
feel like
not a commodity
Revolution-
product, though.
No, but I think Revolution
But
is
it is.
pushing
It's
the
not.
brand to a commodity.
They're pushing the style.
They're pushing the
Yeah.
style to a commodity priced item. However, Goose Island is actually going the opposite route, and they're pushing it to above commodity price. So they're trying to lend
It's
the
n-
idea that the knowledge of the brewers and the company is what's lending it to be something more than commodity price.
Well-
So that's it's worth more. Whereas Revolution is actually taking the sort of the lower end and. Am I wrong? They're taking the
No,
lower
I don't
end
think
route?
you're wrong at all. I mean, but you look at, the original Black Friday, the whole thing that kicked all this ridiculousness off was a beer that was $42.99 for a 22-ounce bottle. Mm-hmm. I mean, that hasn't really been replicated, and that's kind of the
Except
thing.
for the $60.
What?
It's
second-
come close.
Second rare?
Yeah.
Nobody cares about second rare. Let's just be
Get
honest.
at Target.
But yeah, but I mean that was pushing that end, and I mean Greg Hall when he was still incredibly involved with this. I mean he used to come into the store all the time and say, why can't I be at Cantillon pricing? And I mean I would laugh and I'd be like, there's no way Lolita's ever going to be at Cantillon pricing.
They certainly tried.
They tried and it failed
miserably.
And now
So-
they're trying something
Miserably.
new, I think, and they're putting those in the wrapped cans. I believe that's the idea.
For the Goose stuff, for the Goose sours.
The sisters.
I would.
Wow! All
I
right, if
wouldn't-
they do that, I
Okay,
will
I'm
eat
not-
my
I'm
hat.
not-
I
I'm
will
not-
eat my hat.
I'm just saying that's my understanding, but that could
They
be
put it
wrong.
in a room that doesn't mean that.
Right. Who knows?
They're putting
We'll find out. We'll
I
talk about it
wouldn't
here
be
on the show.
surprised if that happened.
But
that's
but
my
those
that's my
beers,
underst-
like the barrel aged
projection.
things, do legitimately remove those from commodity beers.
I think
Why would you?
Not if
disagree
you
with
can
it?
get 3 acres of barrels.
Commodity means it should be based off the commodity plus overhead. So how do you price something that is based off the commodity plus an intangible amount of time and effort spent on it? It cannot be a commodity product.
You don't think that
I don't know, this
I
this
am-
show certainly
I
tried
am-
to put a
Why
price
is
point
that a
on it.
Well, I am
problem
one of
with
the
that?
most vocal people about like how you can distance yourself very far from that.
yeah.
But the idea of that, all of that, Steve, was for people to know what they were drinking. And part of that was that you are drinking something you cannot put a price on. When you put things in barrels, you cannot commodity price the time and the way that it tastes when it comes out of barrels.
How do whiskey people do it then?
What do you?
They don't do it.
They don't.
Yeah.
They charge you way more than they. If you thought that whiskey is based on how much corn costs, whiskey
No.
would be
Or
$2
rent.
No, I'm not saying that at all. But I'm
Amortized
saying,
rent,
I'm
yeah.
saying that at the end of the day, the consumer pushes down and says, "I'm not willing to spend this for what this is." And a lot of the time, it comes down to hype factor. It comes down to marketing, and so on. We all
Sure.
know that the same juice coming out of Noblesville or whatever the hell or wherever the heck it is. Can be sold for $80 in one bottle and $20 in another bottle. That's not
Right. That's 'cause it's already broken.
So
from
let's. I think
commodity
there's a lot
pricing.
of. So let's.
It is. Whiskey is broken from commodity
Yeah.
pricing.
So hold on.
Whiskey is not
Let's
commodity pricing.
reset. Stop. Hold on. We'll talk about this off air a little more. I want to keep talking on this topic, but I want to do a little bit of a reset because we're just kind of meandering.
Are we going
a
to talk
bit.
about zombie dust now?
No, we're going to talk
How
about Bourbon
good
County.
is zombie
but I
dust,
want to
though?
talk about
Citra
It's
hops.
the best.
in
You
light
guys
of
have
all
these
the
Citra
stuff that was
hops?
just said. What does the idea of some of these bigger breweries, super high end stuff, not moving or capturing the same interest, in relation to how much they make? What does that say for them, or maybe is there going to be a trickle down effect? I mean, I know they're making more and they're still selling a lot, but I'm saying the kind of ratio of people who want to buy it to how much they have it's definitely changed. So there's a slowdown of some of these classically, historically, like archetype whale beers.
Classically, like in the last 6 years.
Well, the market
Yes.
has changed. People that were
Classically
chasing them,
craft beer in the Renaissance, yeah.
people have changed
But
that are
no, that's a very good point. That's a very good point, Steve.
the people that are buying them have changed. You look at the customer that you and I had 5-6 years ago is not the same customer that we have now. They've leveled up their game. They're going on to cocktails. They're younger siblings who grew up with craft beer like we grew up with crappy beer that we were drinking, underage. They were drinking, Dogfish 60 Minute and Anti-Hero underage. So they've reached the point where they've now leveled up and they just don't care either. And I think that's borne out in the numbers you see across the country. People are drinking more wine. People are drinking more spirits. Cocktail culture is very important right now. And beer is relegated to, cool, I'll grab a 6-pack or a 12-pack and bring that to my party. And more often than not, it's just a standard IPA or a Pilsner. And that's not a bad place to be in. Arguably, that's what we've been fighting for all these years.
Caught up.
It's just caught up, exactly. What that means for the breweries that have to kind of change their model when you look at KBS or CBS or Bourbon County or Parabol or any of that, and that was all barrel aged, so that was interesting. That's what it came to. But regardless, you have to change up what you're doing. And I mean, that's kind of the death spiral that everybody's in right now, is trying to figure out what is the next cool, hot thing. You're seeing a lot of breweries making lagers that are palatable to industry people, because industry breeds, if I like it or if you like it, people start talking about that. So you see cheap lagers going on. It's the Chug Life, it's the Firestone Walker Lager, it's the whatever. We talked about this the last time I was here.
9 Mezcal bars in Logan Square now.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Nothing's going to be as good as Pivo. People might like it more. They're just wrong.
But I mean, and that's a tried and true way of getting back to it. But Sierra Nevada's doubling down on Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which again, last time I was here, we were talking about how it was a mistake that they're going to hazy IPA, and I got yelled at for that. And then boom, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. So I think that commodity, if we go back to that term real quick, I think that will sustain breweries right now. It's kind of a back to core brands kind of thing. Things that made you good in the first place that are fantastic and kind of pushed you to it. I think
a lot of breweries are going to go back to core brands. We completely got away from what I had tried to reset about, which was, what do you think? I mean, so do you think that can a big brewery have a hot beer? I mean, can Hop Slam be Hop Slam anymore in the way it was?
What does hot beer mean?
I think
bought by many people or talked about on forums?
Well, not if it's old.
both.
Yeah, right.
So that came onto the beer download when it was.
Can it be both?
One
Can it
day
be
old.
both?
So Hop Slam, good example. Errata bought it for the beer download. It was like literally a day old in the can. I kept one extra, and it's been sitting in my cooler for 2, 3, 4 months.
It's still great, I bet.
And it's because I don't really care about Hop Slam. And I think the answer to your question is no. In the long term, a big brewery cannot make a whole bunch of beer and have it continue to be this hotly sought after thing. That's not a thing. Like, part of what drove the popularity of these things was the fact that you couldn't get them very easily. And if you make it so that you can get it very easily, even if the product is every bit as good as it was, it loses some of that luster. And so if it starts to sit on shelves in some places, it's a negative feedback loop. And so the answer to your question, in my view, is no. You cannot take a small product that's quite good, make the exact same product, even if you arguably can do that, make it gigantic. It's not going to happen.
So the question I have then is, can you do it at any size? Can you keep it up indefinitely regardless of size? Take the size out of it.
Indefinitely?
How long has
Yeah.
Alchemist been doing Heady Topper?
I mean, quite a while. I mean, at least
A couple of years, right?
Oh, at least 5.
What if
I'd
you made
say.
Pappy Van Winkle,
6?
maybe? Super easy to get? People wouldn't care as much. I mean, that's just the reality.
It's FOMO, the fear of missing out mentality, and the hype
No,
factor.
but take it back. What if they don't make any more Pappy in terms of number of bottles? Can it remain
Yes.
hyped
Yes.
forever?
also Weller.
I mean, just for
Yeah, that's
For a while.
great point.
yeah,
I mean-
I was at your store today, and they know I'm a bourbon guy, and they're like, "Oh, people are asking us about like Special Reserve Weller," which, if you think about Pappy, it's all the way down the ladder, but people just still want something that seems like Pappy.
That's the beer the whiskey I drink out of the bottle in my garage. It like sits on top of the garage fridge.
Yeah, it's a fine whiskey, but like it's not a whiskey to be asked about.
So-
Not a whiskey to
so
pursue.
what I'm
But
saying is-
does that exist in beer, or is that I think that's the question? Like, is it possible to have that thing where people desire something like that?
well, Pappy hasn't blown up for that long.
it's been
10
about
years.
10 years is a minute. though.
4 to
That's
6 years, honestly. Where I mean, I remember Pappy being.
Yeah, 4 to 6.
I remember
is
it
probably
being a
fair.
shelf whiskey.
Six. It was it's. Six
I remember
where
there was
really
a place,
the
there was a
hockey
wine shop in Chicago called the House of Glens that had a year-round window display of it with a huge cutout of Pappy
But
Van Winkle
again, we
sitting
can't-
in a rocking chair.
You cannot
was just
compare
there.
whiskey to beer in this
Yeah.
way.
I
Because you
don't
can you
think-
can make more of the same beer within, like, if it's a really great beer that's not barrel aged.
Well, I'm giving
few
I'm
months.
torturing the argument in favor of you can keep it going longer, even more using Pappy. But if we want to use beer, it becomes even a more difficult argument to sustain. What I'm saying is, even at small quantities, can any beer remain the darling of can it remain hyped?
While having wide distribution and
No.
wide acclaim.
Nope. No.
So I'm confused by your question.
So mo money, mo problems is what you're
Take
saying.
out increased distribution. Take out how much is made. Just
Those are the
time
most
only.
important factors. Though.
Okay, but take them away. So it's just the turns of the calendar. Is it can it stay?
Chris is saying that you keep making a small amount, and you only make a small amount in perpetuity. Now, this is hypothetical because obviously, if people really want your thing, you're like, well, maybe I could make a little bit more. But let's just say that you're like super artisanal. You just make a little bit every time, no matter what. Is that sustainable? That's Chris's question.
Sustainable as a hyped product that's going to
No.
get bought out all the time.
So again-
so just by nature, it cannot be done, regardless of how much more you make. It
How
just
long
isn't
because
has
if
sustainable.
you're
the
doing that,
Alchemist
it's
been making
artificial.
Heady Topper?
6 years, 8 years, 10 years. I don't know. 8 years, we'll call it. I mean,
Yeah, but how many constraints has the Alchemist had on Heady Topper? So they're not distributing. It's been taproom release this entire time.
no.
So
It's
there's
It's seen
there's some
distribution in the market.
there's
Some
around its home
distribution,
market, yeah.
okay,
Always
in their
has.
home market.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, it's still like a very, I mean, if you're going to consider like the constraints on a single product, it's still like a very limited product.
It's
in
also
the market.
a
How long
specimen of space and time.
could
like the
Pipeworks
time that
have-
that Heady Topper got popular is wholly unique to the rest of how other people come to beers.
Yeah, I think
Heady
they-
Topper became popular in a time when the internet was super popular, like at the very
internet was
cusp.
super popular then.
Right,
Don't-
but they
don't
didn't
laugh
go
at that
out and
because it was
build
like
a new 50-barrel
2005.
brewery to do it. You
No,
know, to
no,
expand.
but
They
that's
didn't. They
different.
didn't.
That's different than popularity.
No, it's a difference in business model. They didn't do the same thing that what's his name, Mike over at Toppling Goliath did. You know, I mean, he had
not
lightning in a bottle in the
disagreeing
same way. Right, but the question is, can you sustain on this one thing?
What do you think? You think you can?
I think you can if you really choose your niche market and you
I think
decide that you really want to grind on it. I don't see a reason why you can't, and you see that in smaller breweries. I think I just, you know what? Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I agree with you. I think that you can sustain, but you need to define success a little bit differently. So it might not be like this like crazy hyped up thing, but like you look at a lot of the beers that Adams is okay. So for example, you know, Saison Dupont, like it is one of my all time favorite beers, and to see that over and over and over again, I think that is a success.
I don't know. Did you guys
to
try the
see.
new Orval dry hopped?
No,
I'm
'cause
kidding.
I'm not on that hype train.
Exactly.
Like
Is
you,
it
Adam.
hazy though?
It's
they're
it's
canning
always
Orval
been
now?
Yeah. That was a good April Fool's joke by Merchant Duvin. But Saison
That
Dupont's a
was-
great
that
point.
was
for
April Fool's?
Like
That
they
sucks.
make other beers, but Saison Dupont has been Saison Dupont
classic.
for a very long time. Orval has been Orval, arguably, for a very long time.
But
I think it's
timing
a
is
different.
so
it's a different
important.
argument.
I don't
You're
think
talking
it
about, can you
is
make a-
because the question remains: can you, in the beer space, make a product that you do the same thing on and not necessarily scale it up? I mean, Orval has 6 main fermenters.
But
6.
DuPont sales are down. Imports
Hold on.
are getting
the
killed.
best example, I think,
They're
for what
dying.
you're talking about
But
is
what's
got to be Russian
success?
River.
Yeah.
Russian River
Yep.
has, you know, a longer track record, 20-ish years, and they've been making products that have been in high demand, and they, quite a while ago, before it was cool, I mean, I don't know if it's ever been cool, said, like, look, this is how big we want to be. We've expanded a little bit because we know that more people want our stuff, but this is how much we're going to make. And to my knowledge, I can't just walk to the store and buy Russian River. Like,
I mean,
it's-
they
in their
contracted with
market-
Firestone for a while.
Right when they were doing
when their
yeah.
brewery got
Yeah.
burned.
Yeah,
But-
I mean,
but-
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, like,
They had to run a business.
they did.
No,
it.
hold
Steve
on.
actually made the best point of all this
no,
entire
that's
argument.
exactly my point. They could have taken that success and said, "Holy crap, we can brew on this large of a system and make beer
But
this good.
also,
we could do this again."
If they had
and
opened
they
in,
didn't do it.
If they had opened in 2011, they would have done it.
Who knows?
Do you really think that?
Here's
do
the-
you think it's
here's
based
the
on
third
market
part.
pressure
100%.
or the person behind the brewery?
Opportunity, I think.
Come
is
on.
yeah, 100%.
But I think what undermines the argument a little bit is that Pliny is easier to get than it has been in a long time. Pliny the Younger is finally something that you can actually go to a place and get. And
drink not
beatification
just out of a shoe.
and beatification, their craziest, most hyped sour, did not sell out on the first day. So I mean, it is slowing down at those same rates.
Okay.
I think it's because
Is that
there's
a
lot
bad
more.
thing?
Well-
I'm not. I don't
No,
know.
no,
I'm
this
not.
is a
I'm
bad
not
thing.
making a judgment call. I'm
Well,
just
Chris,
saying
like,
that
and-
maybe.
Timing.
or
thing.
Chris and Adam is sort of like, you know, retail. You guys have a sense of the retail idea. Like, do you see people coming out less for sort of one-off things or
Oh, yeah.
demand?
Absolutely.
Like, okay, so you feel like that the idea of
I'm
having
not.
You're different. You have a much smaller niche kind of
Okay.
thing.
But I mean, like the idea of like you always have to be changing. You know, from a company standpoint, do you always have to be changing? Can you just put out a good product and then release it strategically? Is that still
That's what you're talking
something-
about with Orval and DuPont.
Exactly.
Right,
Like,
which
is
is-
that something that you can still do? And then
I certainly hope so.
I hope so too.
I think Kate's point of measuring what we consider success is extraordinarily valid here.
Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is down. DuPont is down. All those standard brands are pretty much down. All flagships are down. I know I've heard a lot of breweries talking about wanting to like refocus on their flagships. I think it makes a lot of sense for
is
on the
why-
supply side. It makes a ton of sense. Now on the retailer side,
to be bringing in those wild goose.
right? On the retail side,
Yes,
people
it is.
are still addicted. The hobbyists, and also like the people who are passionate about it are still so intrigued by how much there is out there.
Ooh, I
It's
disagree.
unfathomable. There's so many new breweries that it's like, oh, I haven't had anything from them.
think it's
But
actually-
I can't even try it because I know I love Half Acre, and
This-
they just got this crazy brewery-only release.
The two of you guys disagreeing on this is the most beautiful example of the difference in the bifurcation between on and off-premise consumption of beer right now. Where on-premise, I do not want to have something I don't know about. If I can get like a taster of it, yeah, sure. But I don't want to buy something I don't know what's going to taste like. I want to buy a pint of something, and I want to sit there and I want to enjoy the pint of Schlenkerla I had at your brewery or your tap room earlier today. When I buy something to go home, I don't want to know what is going on with that beer. I want to go home and I want to share it with people. And
Can
I
I
want to
push back a little bit? Can I say, would you be willing to try something from a trusted brand at a trusted location?
I literally did not do that today.
I don't think a lot of
at
people
your,
do.
at your establishment. I didn't buy something from a brand that a brewery I knew that I didn't know what that beer was. I chose to purchase other things that I knew what they were. So I think I am someone who is very open to doing, like having new beers, doing different things. But if I have to invest in 16 ounces in an on-premise setting, it's almost entirely things I've already had before, and entirely things that are like low ABV.
I did the
like
same thing as
older.
Mike today. Like I was at Mars and I looked at the board and it's like this. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that this might be okay and this might be okay or might not. And I literally bought the
Old Milwaukee.
excretively beer, like the $2 beer, because I was like, macro lager will be fine. And
Our beers were on tap, Steve. You don't like our beers?
there's
I
like
did the
40
same
beers on
thing.
tap, and it
So,
was
yeah, I'm
it was
messing-
complicated, and I
Right.
just wanted to
I'm
have a
messing around.
freaking beer.
Yeah.
But
need
you
to-
also saw what was getting poured by other people, and there was definitely a mix. There was a mix of people who wanted something that they knew what they were getting, but also plenty of people, even on premise, who were looking to get something new. And
Sure.
people bounce around. Even you bounced around. Did you get the same beer twice?
I only had one beer there.
I think that
No,
it's,
that's not true.
I
You
mean,
gotta end it,
not
Davis.
to discredit that opinion,
At
Mike,
your
but I
bar.
do
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you are someone who has a good take on the industry and someone who is afforded maybe like
Who would be more open to having more different things? than
potentially,
on-premise?
or someone who is more open to just being generally passively exposed to things. So maybe you're
Don't know what
just
that means, but it sounds
like if you're gonna go to a bar,
derogatory.
maybe you're like no, but maybe like when you're investing your money into things, like you might be able to be exposed to things like a little bit more passively than other people. So people who are like just walking into a bar, they have $10 to spend, like they're gonna maybe try to spend it, get the bang for their buck on their
Kate
experience.
is saying
That's
that
a very wishful thought.
Kate
but I
is saying
don't
that
think-
you get exposed to things through the normal order of the day, where other people have to seek it out.
Exactly.
right,
Thank
and so you think that
Yeah.
if I have $10 to spend, that I'm more likely to spend it on a less adventurous thing?
I think that you probably are, given the fact that you're
I'm not-
probably
I'm
more
very confused.
predisposed to being exposed
Yeah,
to
I think
the
I tend to agree with that.
I
kind
agree
of
with
like
her too.
Ridiculous elements of the craft
Now,
beer industry.
let me ask you a question.
I also did a
Kate.
$2 crappy beer for
Let me.
that same reason.
Would you like to see, trying to bring it around as much as possible? Would you like to see something like Bourbon County become like a DuPont, where it's just like this classic thing? It's got a rich history, and it's just always
I would say
there.
it already is. I would say that the Goose Island version of the.
And are you happy about that?
Yes, I am, because I think that it creates sort of like a base for other breweries to expand upon, including ourselves.
Put your headphones on, Mike.
Mike's feeling sad.
Mike is sad.
I'm out.
So he's out. Okay.
Oh, come
He's
on.
taking his toys and going home. So
But
I'm going home.
I do think that having the Bourbon County as a standard is not necessarily a bad thing. having it as a standard that other breweries have built upon is not necessarily a bad thing. Having that being the standard, not necessarily a bad thing. If Rev is trying to race to the bottom line of commodity pricing for that style, not necessarily a bad thing, because and there's also Goose Island who's reaching above that and creating sort of a more artisanal branch of that style.
Not necessarily, not inherently
No,
a bad
not
thing.
not in that. And again, that pricing is a marketing ploy. It doesn't mean that it is necessarily better or worse than Revolution, better or worse than Pipeworks, better or worse than anyone who makes craft beer that's barrel aged. But what it means is that that's what they're pricing it, and that's how they see it, and so that is a marketing ploy of its own.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. We're out of time. I do have to quickly say we're going to do quick last words.
I don't wanna be part of this.
Yeah. But I do want to say that Diego Sanchez dropped off a beer and at the shop today, which we did not get to open, but we will open it after the show. Thank you so much, Diego, and just left a really lovely note. But we are out of time. I wanted to thank all my guests for the spirited discussion. I think off the outline is kind of the rule for the day. I want to thank my official guests first, Steve and Adam, and then my unofficial guests, Mr. Strong and Miss Tronica. And is there any final words that you want to say in closing out here, Steve?
So you always talk about how this is trying to capture the experiences of blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that this, more than many other episodes, captured that. I mean, it was people sitting around disagreeing with each other. If there weren't microphones, it might have been a little different. But I think that this was kind of what you had in mind in the first place. And it was a little bit more spontaneous
Opinionated
than sometimes.
people who are educated in the topic having discussion. It's exactly what
Right. I'm not sure if the listen was better or worse for
I
the
don't
people
know.
at home.
You guys,
But it was
and I don't-
certainly not uninteresting.
I don't
here.
ask this much. Let me know. What did you guys think of this episode in relation to other episodes? If you hate all the episodes, did you hate this one less? Or did you hate this one more? And that would be insiders at craftbeertemple.com. I would
Say
I would
you hate it less
actually
and get more zombie dust.
You said
appreciate
you're done.
it. I would actually appreciate it. No, he's not done.
I
He never
got
said
it.
he
Mike,
was done.
Done.
Other
Mike,
people said he was
our
done.
our most senior
Yeah, guys.
Panelist.
Just want to plug the Zombie Dust Radio Hour. We film it. We record it every
You do
Thursday
both.
night, conflicting with this show. So please tune into a broadcast we don't broadcast.
Yeah. Well, you can come here and go into Studio Z and
Yeah, Studio Z. You can watch it live.
Yeah,
If
and
you
watch
show
it.
up live, we'll do it.
Yeah. He's not lying there.
Also, I'm out again.
Adam?
I quit.
Okay. Thank
Josh
you.
Knoll
Thanks for
has a
coming
book on Bourbon County coming out. No way. If you're in California, please come to the Firestone dinner. It's going to be super cool, and I want to meet more West Coast people because it's going to be super fun. April 25th.
Very
Details are on the Firestone
call to
website.
action, completely illegal, but that's fine.
Right. But from a non-call to
If
action
you
standpoint,
want, you don't have to.
it probably will be
You're gonna
cool.
be there. People should show up.
I think that is about it, guys. Thank you so much. This has been the Beer Temple Insiders Roundtable. We will see you next week. Until then, so long.
I also want to plug Steve Mastney being a beautiful human being.
Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.